fans, welcome back to Room 237 as I continue my marathon of Italian horror and Giallo films. And for this, I've got another Giallo. And it's one from 1977, and it's Antonio Bito's Watch Me When I Kill. Now, Antonio Bito also directed Bloodstained Shadow, which I also have, and I'll be doing at some point. This kind of looks more like a 80s slasher. And the title doesn't really have much to do with anything, but it probably is the best sounding title out of all the other ones because its original Italian title translates to was it The Cat with the Jade Eyes and The Cat's Victims. Yeah, it translates to The Cat with the Jade Eyes, also known as The Cat's Victims in the UK. But also Terror in the Lagoon in France and The Vote of Death in Germany. So while this has a very slashery sounding title, it's probably the best sounding one. Now this is the Synapse release, which it does have some decent features on here. Mostly interviews. It has 3 short films by Bito. Danza Macabra, and a bunch of other ones in Italian. I'm not going to bother trying to pronounce. It stars Corrado Pani, Paola Tedesco, Franco Sidi, Fernando Cerulli, Giuseppe Adobati. All names sound very familiar. I know, and I know I've seen some of these people, like Paula Tedesco, who was in, what else have I seen her in? Okay, maybe I haven't. Could have swore I did. Of course, a lot of these titles are also in Italian. Giuseppe Adobati. Oh yes, I've definitely seen him. He was in... Sorry, it's taking me a while. I probably should have done this first. His career goes all the way back to the 40s. But... okay, maybe I haven't seen him. I guess it's very familiar names. But anyway. And the music was done by Trans Europa Express, which I think is just 2 guys or 2 people. It's a very Goblin. It's some parts are like Goblin, other parts are like this very heavy, like blues, hard rock, very detective noir. It's a very noir-driven Giallo, and what's very interesting about this is probably one of the least sleaziest Giallos I've ever seen. I don't think there's one scene of nudity. There's not a whole lot of blood. Not really a whole lot of sex either. It's very detective, sleuth. Like, there's a lot of heavy detective work with our characters. Which I thought was nice, actually, to kind of see that. It does have a lot of characters. It is easy to kind of get mixed up with who's who. It also... This movie works a lot with build-up. So it seems like there's a lot of scenes out of context or that aren't really explained very well at first. But it eventually starts to make sense as it goes along. A lot of people really seem to think that this is heavily inspired by Argento, which I can see why. I mean, all gialli of the 70s are inspired by Argento. But more specifically Deep Red, because this does follow the formula of someone witnesses a murder, then they're targeted, then they become driven to solve the case themselves. Only here, it's the love interest or the boyfriend of the person that witnesses the killing. But so uh, sorry, I paused for a second. But basically, what the story is basically, I keep saying basically. Paula Tedesco plays a dancer who witnesses a murder at a pharmacy. Guy's hit in the back of the head, and then his throat is slit. And then she becomes the next target. She's attacked at her home, and she has to move in with her boyfriend, who is played by Corrado Pani. I'm probably butchering these names. I get that. And he's actually the one that's trying to put this case together. And there's these other murders that take place after. So there's this other character that thinks he's actually the intended target. The major red herring, all the clues that Pawnee finds leads to him, and eventually it intertwines. Because the next victim is probably the biggest death in the film. Well, first we see this exchange with these two guys. This guy named Bozy and this other guy. There's some sort of transaction going on between them. Which Bozy, I believe, is the owner of the pharmacy. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure he's the owner of the pharmacy. And this other guy, some sort of transaction. And it's shown out of context. We don't really know what's going on. But I think it comes out that he's a loan shark. But he hears the second victim we see, which is the big kill in the movie. He hears about it on the radio, and he has an association with her, so he thinks he's the intended target. So he thinks he's intended, and so does the dancer, Mara. But what this big death is we have this great sequence where this woman named Esmeralda, she's in her apartment, which is very well lit. She gets the feeling she's not alone. She's walking around. She's cooking dinner, but she hears stuff. We do get a good fake out. Something that normally outside of like a cartoon or a really old like Universal movie probably wouldn't work too well. But I thought it worked well in this. Where there's the shadow of, we see like a jacket and like a fedora or a hat. It looks like a person, but when she turns the light on, it's a coat rack. So, sounds cheesy, but it was a decent fake out. And I thought the way the lighting and everything was, it worked. But then she goes back in the kitchen, and the killer gets a hold of her, and her dinner is in this, like, it's like this stew in the oven. And we get this great shot of in the oven with her head going in, and we see her face going repeatedly into this pan of food, and we hear the sizzling, and we can see it on her face. And then finally, when he lets her fall out, like, she has long hair, but it's all like short and cinched now. Great makeup effects on the face to show the burns. Almost looks like a different actress. But then she gets stabbed, and it's sort of like this Clockwork Orange stylization, like when the cat lady gets killed. Because right when she gets stabbed, we get like this close-up of this taxidermied animal up on the wall. And that's the murder that Bozy hears on the radio, and he thinks he's the intended killer. At the same time, Lucas thinks that this escaped convicted murderer who's been on the loose for 2 months is going around killing jurors. the jurors of his trial, because Esmeralda was. As is this Bozy guy. And that's this guy, Pascal Ferrante's the character's name. He's the one played by Franco Citi. And so Lucas is the one that's doing all of the detection. And there's a lot of scenes of, like, he goes to meet Bozy's wife or ex-wife. He goes to meet Ferrante's wife or ex-wife. And he puts these clues together. And then he gets back with Mara to talk about the things he's found. But they are quickly able to dismiss Ferrante. I'm gonna get into spoilers now because I don't want to spoil the whole movie. But yeah, this is a pretty straightforward Giallo. I mean, if you like Giallos, you're gonna like it, especially if you like Argento style Giallos. It's not as violent. I mean, other than there's 2 major deaths. There's a body count of 6, but there's really 3 big deaths. The opening one, the one with the oven, and then one where someone gets strangled in a bathtub with the shower flex. The rest are more so gunshots and aftermath, like find the bodies that were left behind. But it's a very detection-driven Giallo. No real sleaze at all. I will say the script is very tight. The performances are very well done. I will say the one guy, Bozy, kind of reminds me of Peter Cushing. Kind of reminded me of like an Italian Peter Cushing. But it's by no means one of the best Giallos. I mean, I would sort of put this in the no man's land, in the ether of Giallo. Like, it's not one of the best. It's not one of the worst. It's not over or underrated. It's just kind of straightforward and there. Would almost dare to say it's rather generic. But its pacing is very good, too. I mean, it's 96 minutes. It comes and goes. Basically just watching Lucas put all this together. It does seem confusing at first just because there is a larger number of characters and scenes are purposely shown out of context and without explanation. That way, the build-up and the mystery is, it is more of a mystery and it does unfold more as the build-up goes along, which I actually find more intelligent. But yeah, I would say it's more generic. But if you come across it, definitely check it out. I've seen it here on YouTube. So you can check it out on YouTube. But if you're into collecting physical copies, definitely get the Synapse release like I have. But anyway, I'm going to get into spoilers now. So, spoilers for Watch Me When I Kill. And actually, I was wrong. The woman that Lucas goes to meet, who's the wife or ex-wife, it was not Bozy's. It was the guy in the beginning who got killed in the pharmacy. He's the pharmacy owner. I don't know why I thought Bozy was the pharmacy owner. But anyway, 2 other characters I forgot to mention is Paolo Malco, who's the name I thought of when I saw Paula Tedesco. He was in House by the Cemetery, New York Ripper, and Midnight Killer, which I'll actually have shortly. He plays a guy named Carlo, who works closely with Mara. And then Giuseppe Adibati plays Judge Pastor, who is Carlo's father. So basically, and also the killer is sending threatening calls to Mara and to Bosie. Bosie is the one that gets killed with the in the bathtub with the shower flex. There's even this great scene where Bosie's kind of blocked in a parking garage. He can't get his car through. So Mara, who's behind him, offers to drive it for him. And he makes her promise to do it without getting a scratch or a dent. But when she goes through, the killer comes out with a wrench, starts smashing the windows, trying to get to her, backs into a car, then drives into a post. But this is also with Esmeralda's death, and then with that's why Bosie feels he's the actual intended target. But basically, it all leads up to the end where Mara is not only able to match Carlo's voice with the tapes of the threatening calls, but also one of the calls was meant to lure her out by having her meet up at her private villa, knowing that he knew where that villa was or that it even existed. She was able to narrow down that the killer is Carlo. And so we get this scene at the end in front of Judge Pastor with Carlo and Lucas and Mara, where we get his motive was I guess way back during World War II, Judge Pastor and his family were taken in by Bosie, by Bosie, but then they were captured by the Nazis, put into a concentration camp, and while some of his family died, Carlo somehow survived and escaped. But so now Carlo, grown up, scarred by what he experienced in the Holocaust, he's going after who he feels was responsible for his family's death. So yeah, Judge Pastor gave his family to Bosie. He hid them, but they were found. They went through the Holocaust, not all of them made it. So now Carlo, scarred by that, wants to pretty much get revenge. Starting with the guy who owned the pharmacy in the beginning, because he was one of the Nazis that found them. And after this confession, Judge Pastor gives this line like, "Now I understand." He shoots his own son, Carlo, and then he shoots himself. End of movie. And, so it's kind of more of a sympathetic Giallo. It's more of, you can understand where the killer's coming from. I still stand by everything else I said about this, where, I'm kind of on the fence of calling it bland or generic. It's still entertaining, sure. I mean, it's still an entertaining Giallo with a tight script, decent performances or good performances, especially the scene with Lucas and the escaped convict when they're fighting on the cliff, and they, he's trying to profess his innocence, and he's trying to, question him and tell him, "No, I don't think it's you." That was a pretty decent scene. Very low number of kills, but you do have good kills. Not very bloody. It's not very sleazy. If you like Deep Red, definitely gonna like this. Not nearly as good as Deep Red. I like how it's all really built on mystery and build-up. That's why I found myself getting lost a couple times in this. Had a pretty good explanation at the end with why the killer's doing what he's doing. And I'll say the pacing was good too. I still stand by everything I said. But yeah, I'm glad I saw it at least once. So yeah, and I apologize that this is not my best review. I know I've been stuttering a lot, and it's not as in-depth and poorly explained. So if I go long enough without making a video, I kind of sound stupid in the next one. But anyway, so that is 1977's Watch Me When I Kill. I hope you enjoyed this review, as bad as it was. And yes, I still have a bunch of Italian films to get to, so stay tuned for more Italian horror and Giallo films. Thank you for watching.